The date is February 15th, 1943, at the heart of World War II. A police vehicle travels from the Charlottenburg Women's Prison to the Plötzensee prison in Germany, with an American woman, Mildred Harnack, inside. The next day, Mildred is executed for being an accomplice in preparing high treason, showing favor to the enemy, and espionage. The military court has sentenced you to death by guillotine. Executioner, do your duty. What has this American woman, the only American woman executed on direct orders from Hitler, done to deserve this? And why have so few people ever heard her story?
September 16th, 1902, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the day that Mildred Fish was born. She was the youngest of 4 children born to William and Georgina Fish. Growing up in Milwaukee, Mildred was heavily influenced by the German culture around her, but she never learned German. Years later, when Mildred was an assistant teacher for English literature at the University of Wisconsin, she met Arvid Harnack, her future husband. He was a German Rockefeller scholar studying at the university. Arvid hardly spoke English, and Mildred couldn't speak German, so the two agreed to swap language lessons. They quickly bonded over their interests in politics, literature, and German culture. Soon after, they married. When Arvid's fellowship was completed, he returned to Germany, and Mildred followed a year later. After a few years, Arvid began to work for the economics ministry as an official of the German government. Mildred studied for her doctorate, after which she secured a teaching job and started to translate German literature into English. A while after Arvid and Mildred moved to Germany, the country came under new government rule, Hitler and the Nazi Party. Hitler claimed that he would make Germany great again. Even though Mildred and Arvid were not fooled by his promises and tactics, most of the population believed his lies, and Hitler and the Nazi Party rose to power.
The Harnack saw that as Hitler continued to conform and control Germany, its citizens were being stripped of their freedom. The Harnacks wanted to do whatever they could to preserve German independence. They saw the brutality of Hitler and the Nazis and chose to fight back against the regime. Arvid's position in the economics ministry gave him opportunities with the US and Soviet embassies. Mildred was translating and distributing information, and Arvid was providing economic secrets, which by German law was an act of treason. But they were missing military intelligence. In 1939, the Harnacks were introduced to Harro Schulze-Boysen, a lieutenant in the German Air Force, a man who was also against Hitler. This was the beginning of their Nazi resistance group. They would send both military and economic secrets to Hitler's enemies abroad. They started to reach out to countries they thought could shorten Hitler's reign. Having learned that America's newly elected president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, was hiring some of their friends from the University of Wisconsin for positions in the government, they knew that they had allies in the United States. They also contacted the Soviet Union, which under communism had a planned economy that Arvid considered an interesting alternative to the Great Depression in Germany. The Russians made gains towards women's rights, something that Mildred and Arvid felt strongly about. The Harnacks promised information to any country that would help to end the Third Reich and Hitler's reign.
The Harnacks were members of the secret underground Nazi resistance. Their particular group of people, a circle of friends, consisted of 3 other couples, the Schulze-Boysens, the Kukoffs, and the Siegs. All 4 couples were respected in Germany as scholars, government officials, and artists. The Gestapo nicknamed the group the Red Orchestra, and those who knew them often referred to them as the Harnack-Schulze-Boysen group. Their main priority was taking down Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. Arvid Harnack was a leader in this Nazi resistance group. Very knowledgeable in economics, and as an employee of the German government, Arvid was able to forward economic information to the US Embassy, which was wanting to carefully monitor Germany's economic war plans. Because of Schulze-Boysen's position, they were able to steal military secrets from the regime, such as battle plans and weapon information. All gathered information was encrypted and sent to Hitler's enemies. The group ran a secret printing press that published anti-Nazi leaflets that were passed out to like-minded Germans. They documented acts of Nazi violence and gathered evidence against the Third Reich. The Harnack-Schulze-Boysen group made it a mission to help endangered Jews to escape.
But where does Mildred fit into all this? She was much more than a leader's wife. Mildred used her teaching job to recruit students into the Nazi resistance. Their network included people of all different faiths and backgrounds, anyone who objected to the Nazi dictatorship. For her husband, she typed and passed out leaflets, translated speeches from foreign leaders, maintained connection with the other members of the group, and arranged secret meetings. The fact that Mildred worked for a Berlin book publisher, along with her American passport, allowed for travel across Europe, where she delivered documents and assisted Jews by helping them to get visas and by smuggling valuables to other family members. Mildred had to keep her friends and family in the dark because what she was doing was extraordinarily dangerous. Everything that she was doing was considered illegal and an act of treason, as the Nazis had complete control over the country.
The Harnack Schulte Boysen Group was always careful when conducting their resistance work, for one small slip-up could mean capture and death. They used code names to bring no avoidable danger to anyone. When the group was finally caught, it was due to careless and inexperience from the Soviet Union, leading to the arrests of everyone in the resistance group. August 31st, 1942, Harl Schulze Boysen, the other leader of their resistance group, was arrested in his office. Harl's wife sensed something was wrong when he didn't come home. She attempted to sneak out of the country, but the Gestapo captured her at the train station. Friends of the Harnacks and others in the group were soon unaccounted for. On September 7th, the Harnacks were tracked down by the Gestapo and were arrested while on vacation at the North Seashore. More than 100 arrests were the result of multiple errors caused by the Soviet intelligence.
The disaster had started a year earlier when Russian transmitters wired the names and addresses of 3 members of the Harnack Schulte Boysen Group to their agents in Brussels. Though it was encrypted, it provided the German counterintelligence with the text from the message. The next error occurred a few months later when a Russian agent stayed on the radio for 7 nights in a row, transmitting for hours at a time. This gave the Germans plenty of time to latch onto the signal and locate the source of it. German agents then broke into the location and gathered compromising materials, arresting all those present at the scene. The gathered intelligence led to yet more arrests. Hitler was furious, stunned by the fact that there was a Nazi resistance group within his own government. These people were part of the elite, high-ranking officials in the regime who had betrayed him. He took it personally. Most were tried for treason and espionage, both punishable by death. When Hitler received the verdicts, he confirmed the death sentences and signed the documents. But Hitler did not agree with the judgment against Mildred, only 6 years of hard labor. A new trial was ordered. Hitler did not want any martyrs. During Mildred's second trial, new accusations were fabricated in order to carry out the death penalty. Mildred was beheaded on February 16 of 1943.
After the executions, the Third Reich proceeded to tarnish the characters of members in the resistance, labeling them as professional gamblers, drug addicts, communist fanatics, and outlaws acting as foreign agents. Absolutely none of this was true, but such was the time when people had the power not only to snuff out the lives of Mildred and her friends, but also to tarnish their memory. The Russians used Mildred's story for Cold War propaganda, changing it and using it for their own purposes. And the Americans chose to believe the Nazi and Soviet lies and had no wish to set the record straight.
And I have loved Germany so much. The last words of Mildred before her life was taken from her in 1943. In one of Mildred Fish Harnack's last letters written to a friend, she said, "Better not write, but don't forget me." Unfortunately, in the United States, Mildred was forgotten, as she was thought of as a communist, a spy, and linked to the Soviet intelligence. She is not mentioned in history books, never received the respect she deserved. Until in 1986, Wisconsin marked September 16th, her birthday, as a day to remember the woman who stood up against Hitler. The native Wisconsinite Mildred Fish Harnack was a member of the Nazi resistance in Berlin during World War II. She and her husband relayed Nazi secrets to the Americans in the U.S. Embassy and the Russians in the Soviet Union, for the sole purpose that these countries would be able to overthrow Hitler and the Nazi regime. Her independence and strong moral values allowed her to be a nonconformist to Hitler's ways. Mildred's life suggests how an ordinary person can rise above gruesome circumstances with remarkable courage and dignity. Even though Mildred paid with her life for refusing to obey Adolf Hitler and his Nazi army, she stood by her beliefs and inspired others to do so as well.